Working security at night might sound boring. Just empty hallways, flickering lights, and the hum of old machinery. But sometimes the things you're supposed to protect aren't the only things lurking in the dark. Tonight on Nightmaze, I will share 3 true stories from security guards who learned the hard way that some shifts are never forgotten. I've worked as a security guard for most of my life. Gas stations, convenience stores, small shops, places where you mostly just sit around, keeping an eye on things. So when I saw the ad for a night shift at the local mall, I thought I'd finally found something better. The pay was good, the hours weren't bad, and I figured it would be quiet. How hard could it be? I got the job the same day I applied. The manager, Mr. Hensley, barely looked at my resume. He just asked if I could start that night. "We're understaffed," he said, rubbing his temples. "Last few guards didn't last. I hope you'll be different." That should have been my first warning. When I arrived at the mall, the parking lot was empty. The building looming in the dark like a sleeping giant. Mr. Hensley met me at the door, led me through winding corridors to the security office, and ran through the basics. Check the cameras every 15 to 30 minutes. Do your rounds. Keep an eye on the escalators in the play area. Things happen there sometimes, he said, almost as an afterthought. Once he left, I was alone. The silence of the empty mall settled over me like a heavy blanket. I took a seat in front of the monitors, flipping through the camera feeds. For a moment I relaxed. It was just a mall. Nothing creepy about that. And I felt a presence behind me. It was the janitor. He grinned, clearly amused by my reaction. "Didn't mean to scare you, buddy. You must be the new guy." He handed me a crumpled piece of paper. "These aren't from the manager. These are the rules you'll need if you want to make it through the night." I unfolded the paper, expecting a joke. But the list was anything but funny. Rule 1. Check the security cameras every 15 to 30 minutes, but don't stare at the footage for too long. Rule 2. Never look directly at the mannequins after midnight. If the mannequins change position, leave the area immediately. I stared at the list, my gut tightening with discomfort. "You're serious?" I asked. The janitor's grin vanished. "I'm warning you, follow the rules or you'll end up like the last guy." He nodded, eyes cold. He quit after one night. I tried to laugh it off, but his tone stuck with me. I stuffed the paper into my pocket and started my first round. The mall was eerie at night. The dim lighting cast long, twisting shadows along the tiled floors. Every sound felt amplified my footsteps, the hum of the lights, the distant creaks and groans of the building settling. I checked the stores, most locked up tight. The children's play area stood silent and still, the colorful plastic toys looking strange and lifeless under the emergency lights. Farther down, the escalators stood frozen, like relics from a busier time. That's when I noticed something strange in one of the clothing stores. The door was wide open. I swept my flashlight over the dark interior. At first, nothing seemed out of place. But then, in my peripheral vision, I saw a slight shift, like something or someone was hiding in the dark. I turned my head, but there was nothing. Just a few mannequins standing near the back, motionless as always. Then I heard the faint sound of clothing rustling. My flashlight flicked back toward the mannequins. One of them had definitely moved. It was standing a little closer now, slightly out of position compared to the others. My heart started to pound. I called out, "Hey, Mr. Janitor," more out of frustration than anything else. No answer, just the soft, unsettling shuffle of fabric behind me. I turned slowly. Another mannequin had changed positions, its head now facing directly toward the exit. No one else was here. There was no way this was a trick. I backed out of the store quickly, glancing over my shoulder. Then I heard footsteps. Heavy, rough, like wood or plastic scraping against the floor. I turned around, and there it was. The same mannequin from the store, standing in the middle of the hallway, staring at me with its blank, lifeless face. It started to move toward me, its joints creaking and groaning with every step. I did what any sane person would do. I ran. I ducked into the restroom, splashing cold water on my face, trying to convince myself it was all in my head. But as I looked into the mirror, I saw something else, a woman standing near the stalls, her back to me, dressed in a cleaning uniform. I blinked, and she was gone. I collapsed to my knees, exhausted and terrified. Then I remembered the list. Rule 3. If a mannequin looks like it's following you, don't look back. If you ignore them, they'll stop. If you look, they'll know you're aware, and they'll get closer. Rule 4. Avoid looking into the mirrors of the restroom. It's too late for that. My stomach twisted in knots. I had already broken 2 of the rules. I tried to steady my nerves and read the rest of the rules. Rule 5. If you hear someone talking inside an abandoned store, do not listen. Rule 6. If you hear a child laughing from the play area, leave immediately. Rule 7. If you check the time and it's earlier than the last time you looked, immediately return to the security office. I glanced at my watch. It read 11:30 p.m., but I had started my patrol after midnight. This wasn't possible. I rushed out of the restroom, heart racing, making my way back to the security office. The air felt heavier, the lights flickered. The mall felt alive, watching and waiting. I slammed the office door behind me, locked it, and checked my watch again. Almost 1:00 a.m. That seemed right. But what had happened earlier? Why had the time changed? I sat down, trying to steady my shaking hands. I needed to keep my head on straight. Read through the remaining rules. Rule 8. Lock the security office door between 4:00 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. Do not open it for anyone if they knock. Rule 9. If you hear someone crying in a dressing room, do not open the door. Rule 10. If you hear an escalator running, do not investigate. Watch the area on the security cameras. Rule 11. Under no circumstances should you leave before your shift ends. If you do, you risk something following you outside the mall. What kind of job had I taken? The rest of the night was a blur of terror-mumbling voices in abandoned stores, mannequins that moved when I wasn't looking. The escalator running was something tall and unnatural, riding it, staring straight into the camera. At 4:03 a.m., someone knocked at the office door. The janitor's voice called out, friendly, but somehow wrong. The cameras showed nothing in the hallway. I didn't open the door. When the real janitor finally appeared on the monitors, he stared into the camera, his face twisting into an eerie grin before dissolving into smoke. I survived the night. Barely. I never went back. I don't know what happened to the guards before me, and I don't want to know. If you ever take a job as a night guard at the mall, remember the rules. Whatever you do, don't look back. I never thought I'd end up working nights at a cemetery, but after losing my job at the factory, I was desperate for work, and the graveyard shift literally was the only thing available. The pay was decent, and the hours were quiet, or so I thought. The cemetery was old, the kind of place with crooked headstones and ancient trees that creaked in the wind. My job was simple. Walk the grounds every hour, check the gates, and make sure no one was sneaking in to cause trouble. Most nights, it was just me, my flashlight, and the endless rows of graves. The first few weeks were uneventful. I'd walk my rounds, listen to music on my phone, and sometimes talk to myself just to break the silence. The only company I had was the occasional stray cat or the distant hoot of an owl. I started to think the job was going to be easy money. But then, one night in late October, things changed. It was colder than usual, and a thick fog had rolled in, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. I was halfway through my shift, walking the path that led past the old mausoleum at the far end of the cemetery. The mausoleum was a stone building, covered in moss and ivy, with heavy iron doors that were always locked. I'd never seen anyone go near it. At first, I thought it was just a branch hitting the stone, but the tapping was too rhythmic, too deliberate. It sounded like fingernails on glass. I stopped and listened. The tapping continued, steady and insistent. I shined my flashlight at the mausoleum, but the fog swallowed the beam. I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to ignore it and kept walking, but the tapping grew louder, echoing through the night. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I walked up to the mausoleum and pressed my ear against the cold stone. The tapping was coming from inside. I called out, "Is anyone in there?" My voice sounded small and shaky. There was no answer, just the tapping, now faster, almost frantic. I circled the building, shining my light through the small, barred windows. That's when I saw a pale face, pressed against the glass from the inside. Eyes wide and unblinking. The skin was gray, almost translucent, and the mouth was open in a silent scream. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The face vanished. The tapping stopped. I radioed for backup, but the other guard on duty was on the opposite side of the cemetery. By the time he arrived, the mausoleum was silent and empty. We checked the doors and windows. Everything was locked tight. There was no sign that anyone had been inside. The next morning, the groundskeeper found fresh scratches on the inside of the window, as if someone or something had been trying to get out. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, maybe a trick of the fog and the shadows. The image of that face haunted me. A few nights later, I was doing my rounds when I heard the tapping again. This time it was louder, more desperate. I didn't go near the mausoleum. I just kept walking, pretending I hadn't heard anything. But the cemetery wasn't done with me. One night, I was sitting in the caretaker's shed trying to warm up with a cup of coffee when I heard footsteps outside. I looked at the monitor. There was a small security camera pointed at the path outside the shed. The screen showed nothing but fog. The footsteps grew louder, crunching on the gravel. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door. The path was empty. I stepped outside, shining my light around. The fog was so thick I could barely see my own feet. Then I heard a whisper, so soft I almost missed it. "Help me." I spun around, heart racing. The voice was coming from the direction of the mausoleum. I wanted to run, but something compelled me to follow the sound. I walked slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. The fog seemed to close in around me, muffling every sound except for the whisper. "Help me." I reached the mausoleum. The tapping had started again, frantic and wild. I pressed my ear to the door. "Please, let me out." I fumbled with my keys, even though I knew I didn't have one that would fit the old lock. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the flashlight. It rolled away, the beam spinning wildly. Suddenly, the tapping stopped. The whisper faded. The fog seemed to lift, just a little. I picked up my flashlight and backed away, never taking my eyes off the mausoleum. I didn't sleep at all that day. When my shift ended, I told the manager what had happened. He just shook his head. "You're not the first to hear things out there," he said. "But the mausoleum's been sealed for decades. No one's getting in or out." I quit a week later. I couldn't take the nights anymore. The tapping, the whispers, the feeling that I was being watched. Sometimes when the wind is just right, I still hear that voice in my dreams. If you ever find yourself working the graveyard shift at a cemetery, remember, some things are better left undisturbed. If you hear tapping from inside a mausoleum, don't answer. Might not like what you find. I never believed in ghosts? Not really. I always thought night security was the easiest job in the world. Just empty hallways, a few cameras, and a lot of time to yourself. But after what happened to me, I can't walk through an office building at night without feeling watched. I worked security at an old office tower downtown. It's a kind of place with faded carpets, buzzing fluorescent lights, and elevators that groaned every time you pressed a button. My shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and most nights the building was dead quiet after midnight. The cleaning crew would leave by 12:30, and then it was just me, the cameras, and the hum of the vending machines. It was a stormy night in late November when things changed. The rain was coming down in sheets, and the wind rattled the windows so hard I thought they might break. I was sitting in the security office, sipping bad coffee, and watching the monitors, when I noticed something strange. A light was on in one of the conference rooms on the 7th floor. I checked the log. No one was supposed to be there. The last person to leave had signed out hours ago. I radioed the cleaning crew, but they didn't answer. I figured maybe someone had forgotten to turn off the lights, or maybe a late worker had come back for something. Either way, it was my job to check. I grabbed my flashlight and took the elevator up. The ride was slow, the kind that makes you feel every floor. When the doors opened, the hallway was dark, except for a thin line of light spilling out from under the conference room door. As I walked closer, I heard voices. Not loud, but urgent-like, to people whispering, arguing about something. I stopped outside the door, listening. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was tense, almost desperate. I knocked. The voices stopped. I waited, but no one answered. I opened the door. The room was empty. The lights flickered, then went out, plunging me into darkness. My flashlight beam shook as I swept it across the room. Empty chairs, a long table, nothing out of place. I tried the light switch, but nothing happened. Then my radio crackled with static. Through the static, I heard my own name whispered, so soft I almost missed it. Jamie. I froze. My name isn't common, and no one else was supposed to be in the building. I tried to answer, but the radio just hissed. I turned to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. I pulled harder, but it was stuck, as if something on the other side was holding it closed. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly. I could see my breath in the beam of my flashlight. That's when I saw it in the reflection of the conference room window. A figure standing behind me. Tall, thin, and impossibly still. Its face was just a blur, like a smudge on glass, but I could feel it staring at me. I spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. The door finally gave way, and I stumbled out into the hallway, slamming it shut behind me. I ran back to the security office, locking the door and watching the monitors with shaking hands. Every camera feed showed empty hallways, dark offices, and the rain streaking down the windows. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I tried to calm down, telling myself it was just my imagination, the storm, the late hour. But then I noticed something on the monitors, a shadow moving down the 7th floor hallway, just out of the camera's range. It would flicker into view for a second, then vanish. No matter how many times I rewound the footage, I couldn't get a clear look. I decided to stay in the office for the rest of the night. I didn't care if the lights were left on, or if someone complained in the morning. I wasn't going back up there. But the building wasn't done with me. Around 3 a.m., the radio crackled again. This time the voice was clearer, but it wasn't my name. It was a single word, repeated over and over, growing louder each time. Leave, leave. I turned the radio off, but the word echoed in my head. I checked the monitors again. The shadow was gone, but now, on the 1st floor, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A single wet footprint in the middle of the lobby. No one had come in or out. The doors were locked, the cameras showed nothing. But the footprint was there, glistening in the harsh fluorescent light. I watched as, slowly, another footprint appeared next to it, and another. As if something invisible was walking across the floor, leaving a trail of water behind. I wanted to run, to get out of the building, but I remembered the rules: never leave your post before your shift ends. I locked the office door, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark, listening to the storm and the sound of my own heartbeat. The rest of the night passed in a blur of fear and exhaustion. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faceless figure standing behind me, reflected in the glass. Every time the radio crackled, I jumped. When the sun finally rose, I gathered my things and left without looking back. I didn't even bother to check out with the morning guard. I just wanted to get as far away from that building as possible. A few days later, I got a call from my supervisor. Sounded annoyed. Jamie, did you forget to clean up after yourself? There were muddy footprints all over the lobby, and the conference room on 7 was a mess. Next time, do your job. I quit that day. I never told him what really happened, never told anyone until now. If you ever find yourself working the night shift in an old building, pay attention to the little things. It's the lights that flicker for no reason, the voices you hear when you're alone, the shadows that move just out of sight. Sometimes you're not as alone as you think. Night shifts can be lonely, but sometimes it's what you can't see that's the most terrifying. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe to Nightmaze for more true horror from the shadows. If you ever worked security or experienced something you can't explain, share your story in the comments below. Just don't forget to like, share, and hit the bell so you never miss a Nightmaze.